Let's go to the last signs and symptoms of spiritual complacency. There are 7, and we'll speak about the 6th and the 7th. The 6th one is the person begins to make concessions to personal desires, no longer obeying God with reverence, nor taking the things of God seriously. Let's unpack this, unbox this symptom. We're speaking about spiritual complacency, that there are symptoms that little by little it happens over time. It can take even years to manifest itself fully in the life of a person. And here's the danger. Because the person, little by little, stops doing what faith requires and starts doing what the flesh requires. And the 6th symptom has a lot to do with it. Because in the beginning, it says, it begins to make concessions to personal desires. You know that Christian life with God, is a constant, daily struggle between the flesh and the spirit. Our flesh, which is our will, and our spirit, who wants to do God's will. We are always fighting. Paul spoke about it, that the flesh lusts against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh, that we may not do what we know we have to do. So this spiritual battle is daily. However, when the person begins to settle down, they begin to lose this battle and start making concessions to their own desires. Remember, God doesn't take away our will. He doesn't take our desires. If He did, He would also take away our freedom. Our faith in Him would have no value, no sense. Our faith in God only has value because we choose to believe in Him, to serve Him, to be faithful to Him. If He takes our will away, this disappears. So God doesn't take our will away. That is why we will always have to fight to overcome our desires. He gives us conditions. He gives us His Spirit, His Word, His name. He gives us many spiritual weapons. We must use them. But because our will is alive, it's always manifesting itself. The heart is always asking for more. For instance, there are times that you don't want to pray, that I don't want to pray. I'm a bishop. How come, bishop? You're saying that you don't want to pray? My spirit wants, but my flesh doesn't want at times, because our flesh wants to sleep, to watch TV, wants to do something that is more pleasant to it. Prayer doesn't appeal to the flesh. But why do I pray? Because I don't do my will. I won't do doing what I want, because I know it will harm me. If I always do what I want, I'll get hurt. So your flesh often does not want to pray. But you need to put your spirit in control and say, I will pray, because I need to talk to God. I need to keep my communion with God. So our will often is against God and ourselves. Your will, at times, wants to do something that harms you. Your will wants to be inclined to evil and lead you to do what is wrong. So when the person becomes complacent, spiritually speaking, little by little, at first it's just a little, they say, let me allow myself to do this. Remember that part that we said, if I'm not mistaken, the first or second, the sense of well-being leads to abandonment or reducing practices of faith. Remember the analogy of football, that the most dangerous moment in a match is after a goal is scored. So it has to do with making concessions to your own desires. When we score a goal in our spiritual life, oh, I went to church, I took part in a night vigil, I did a great sacrifice, evangelized, I brought a soul to the church. Anyway, when we score a goal, spiritually speaking, this is the most dangerous moment, because this is the moment that the soul, the heart, your personal desire is telling your spirit, now you will give me a break. Now you will give me some time. Now you will please me. Look at this. You just did something very good. Now I have the right to have what I want to. And here's the danger. Here is when the concessions to your own will begin. If I just do this, it will harm me in any way, because I just scored a great goal in my spiritual life. Be careful, because little by little, we start to make concessions to our own will. I won't go to church today. God knows, God understands. I won't pray because I'm tired. I pray in my thoughts. I won't read the Bible, but I know what is written already. I remember what I've read yesterday. We start to make concessions. And then little sins start to come. At work, you start flirting with someone. You are a married person or the other is married. And it is the flesh. You look at each other, you make a compliment, you let your flesh to be inclined to it, and you allow yourself to flirt with them. It's just a joke. Just to see if you still can attract the opposite sex. Then you allow yourself to make that joke. It was just an emoji, just a sticker. And then you make concessions. Likewise, many betrayals begin with a little concession. I'll just do this. It does no harm. You have been having bad eyes. Yes, but this is how a fall begins, when we start making little concessions to our desires. No longer obeying God with reverence, which means we lose the fear of the Lord, nor taking the things of God seriously. So we no longer take seriously that which we approached with fear. Now, things of God begin to become normal. And the last symptom is abandons the sacrifices that faith requires. This symptom is also connected to the antidote to all other symptoms. So that I may not fall into a spiritual complacency, what should I do? I must always attend to the sacrifices that faith requires. My faith in God demands me daily sacrifices. Jesus said, if I want to follow Him, I must take my cross daily, deny myself, and follow Him. Which means it is a daily sacrifice to deny my will. Faith requires sacrifices of our flesh, of our own desires, so that I may please God and not my flesh. When I start to abandon the sacrifices that faith requires, automatically I make space to complacency. That's why you hear in Christian environments, Christian and evangelical circles, people who support the grace, this idea. They misunderstand grace as if it was the absence of sacrifice. I don't need to sacrifice because I live in the grace. People confuse grace with absence of sacrifice. The word grace in the Bible, in the theological and Christian teaching, it has to do with what we don't deserve from God, but He gives us regardless. It doesn't mean that I can become comfortable because you always give me. No. I must understand, even in times of grace, I must deny my flesh. I need to love my enemy. I need to watch over my eyes so that I may not look at a woman and lust in my heart, because this is adultery, which is harder than in the law, because adultery, according to the law, was if I slept with her. But if I just desire that woman, I'm already in adultery. In grace, I need to turn the other cheek. Do you want a greater sacrifice than this? So people confuse grace with the absence of sacrifice, and one thing has nothing to do with the other. When we read the words from Paul, when he says, in the end of his life, he declares something about his spiritual state and his willingness to depart from this world. He says in 2 Timothy 4 from verse 6, he says, "For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand," which means he saw himself as a sacrifice on the altar, which is the idea that every Christian should have. And Romans 12 also speaks about it, that we are a living sacrifice to God, which means a daily sacrifice. And he concludes saying, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." Let me ask you something. Do these words sound like from someone complacent spiritually? Do they sound as coming from someone who does not live by faith? No, it came from someone who was very familiar with sacrifice. He was the sacrifice itself, and a life of sacrifice by faith that protects us, which is the antidote to spiritual complacency. So, a reminder of the 7 symptoms: a sense of well-being that leads to abandoning or reducing the practices of faith. Second, no longer praise or only praise in critical moments. Third, Bible reading becomes rare, shallow, and rushed. Fourth, church attendance becomes infrequent and sporadic. Fifth, justifies failures and omissions with phrases like "God knows" or "it's not quite like that." Sixth, begins to make concessions to personal desires, no longer obeying God with reverence nor taking the things of God seriously. And seventh, abandons the sacrifices that faith requires. If you notice any of these symptoms in your life, either you are complacent already or you are on the way to. Wake up while there's time, so that you may not find yourself like Samson, who thought God was still with him, but he hadn't realized that God had departed from him long ago. And when he went out to fight the Philistines, thinking, "As I overcame them before, certainly I'll overcome them again." And when he went there, he was arrested by them, had his eyes pierced, and became a joke in Israel. Wake up while there's still time, so that you may not become like Samson, who despised the vow he made with God, who had his strength as something that was always guaranteed. But our guarantee is in keeping our faith alive until the end. If today's video helped you and you know someone that could benefit from it, share it with them. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you may do so now. See you later.